Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose. On this episode, we have deviated from our usual format of interviewing guests and are looking forward to giving our audience an inside look into the formation of Identity Unboxed. Brad and I are so grateful to have had the opportunity to share our personal stories in a vibrant discussion with Nancy Joseph for a feature in the Perspectives newsletter, a monthly publication that highlights stories within the University of Washington College of Arts and Sciences community. As Husky alumni, this conversation was so valuable as we were given space to speak about the impetus behind our decision to pursue this project, reflect on our own journeys of navigating our identities and time at the UW, and share more about our vision to amplify voices within our community while fostering authenticity. Follow us on Instagram at Identity Unboxed to stay up to date with our project and also submit nominations for potential future guests. You can read this story in Perspectives this February. We are also returning with our next episode Monday, January 8th at 7 a.m., where we sit down with Rico Kiddingdongo, Director at the Office of Planning and Community Development for the City of Seattle. We appreciate our listeners so much and hope that you find this episode inspiring and helpful as you begin setting your goals for this new year.
Tell me where each of you are from and why you chose to come to the UW and why you chose your undergraduate majors.
Yeah, I'm happy to start unless Brad, you'd like to go first.
Go ahead, take it away, T.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm from Olympia, Washington, and I, was first generation college student. So I, from an early age had decided I wanted to pursue higher education, primarily because I, lived in a low income household and I watched my parents struggle in and out of minimum wage jobs and bouts of unemployment. And I knew I wanted to create a life for myself that was stable. And I, decided on the UW. It was my dream school. And I graduated from there. So it was amazing, to be able to achieve that dream. But leading up to that point, I worked really hard. I challenged myself in my academics and athletics, and I really found a passion for social justice work, which is how Brad and I came together in high school. Actually, we both attended Tumwater High School, and I initially had set out to pursue pre-med. I had attended this conference for Black students across Washington State at the UW, and that really did solidify the UW as my dream school. Once I stepped on the campus and I was surrounded by excellent Black individuals, across the state. And it was actually the first time I had really been immersed within my Blackness. I'm biracial, half Black, half white. And I essentially was kind of isolated from my Black culture growing up. I was raised, by a single mom, by my mom's side of the family. And I didn't have that chance to delve into my culture until I attended that conference, believe it or not, my junior year of high school. And Brad and I attended it together. And our high school counselor was fantastic. He had invited us to go there. And I had felt this sense of pride. I remember just being in that space and just witnessing excellence and seeing people that, I could look up to and myself reflected in that space. I had never really had a role model that looks like me growing up. I had amazing role models, so many people that I looked up to and that supported me in all my dreams. But it was the first time that I saw, Black people that were successful, that, had come from a similar background to mine, and they were able to kind of transcend their circumstances. So, I applied to UW my senior year. I end up, I get in, and that was a huge accomplishment for me. And it was, amazing for my family. And I went into the UW deciding that I wanted to do pre-med initially. I kind of thought, well, maybe I want to be a physical therapist. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And my freshman year, it was really difficult. I will be frank. I was working. I was, financially just trying to make it work up here in Seattle, one of the most expensive cities in the country. And I was taking some challenging courses, and I was a part of this program called the Educational Opportunity Program for first generation low income minority students. And that was probably one of the best, options for me to be in a group of people that were able to help me kind of get through some of those challenges and overcome those barriers. And I, quickly realized after I took this very challenging chemistry class that I'm not sure I want to pursue the pre-med. I've always been really creative. And my winter quarter freshman year, I decided to take an African American literature class. So that social justice passion, wanting to learn more about my history and my Black culture and my identity really comes out in that course. And I start to read Black authors for the first time. I start to see, some of myself in these stories that I'm reading. And, I had the first Black author I'd read was my senior year of high school. It was Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. And I end up reading this. It's kind of unbelievable.
That's pretty shocking.
It is, yes. And Black literature wasn't something that was really integrated through, the public school K through 12, at least in our district where we were, unfortunately. And I just remember that kind of sparked something within me. And I kind of had this insatiable desire to learn more about where I came from, and I believe it really influenced my choice to go into journalism. So I switched my major from pre-med, take a complete, 180 turn. And I'm like, I'm going to go into the arts. Not the most stable, lucrative career, as some might believe, but my world starts kind of opening up. I start getting opportunities. I, had a fantastic internship that really prepared me and showed me that I was capable, that I could really, be a writer. And I end up graduating throughout the pandemic and have a hard time, finding a job. And I was looking for news jobs, kept coming up short. And end up finally getting a job that was somewhat in my field. But I still had this passion for storytelling. So I have been freelance writing for a magazine in the Kirkland area for some time, covering that culture, nonprofit, small businesses, and stories that I believe really make an impact, and also, uplifting marginalized communities and telling those authentic stories, which kind of segues into why we decided to start the podcast. But I'll stop there and allow Brad to share. I know that was very long-winded, but yeah, Brad.
That's great. One question for you. What was the internship that you said was so...
Yes, I was able to get an internship with Sports Illustrated. I covered Husky football recruiting. So that was really fun. And I got to speak to so many amazing, kids that were looking at the UW as a prospective school. And they were hoping to play D1 football. So it was very cool and exciting, fast-paced.
That's great. Okay. Brad, go for it. You're a poli-sci major, right?
Awesome. Yes, I'm poli-sci major. I'm a double dog. So I have my bachelor in political science, and then I also have my master of public administration. As Tiana said, we were both born and raised in the same town, Olympia, Washington. We both went to Tumwater High School, where we often experienced, being the only Black kid in the class and not learning much about our history and our culture, and not seeing ourselves represented where we were. And one thing that I leaned heavily on just in my life trajectory, was my work ethic and my academics. Similar to Tiana, coming from a low income background, it's that innate desire and drive to want to do better for yourself and want to make a life for yourself. And I think that's why we connected, and that's something that we both had. And, similarly with that social justice background, I was a secretary of the Cultural Awareness Club at Tumwater High School. And that really kind of like sparked my passion, for social justice, for social issues. Once I got that position in that club, it, allowed me to actually connect with a handful of students of color that, it was like, wow, we're actually all experiencing the same things, even though we're not connected. And it just unraveled into me diving deeper into learning about my culture, about American history, and how, the unspoken things that are forgotten when it comes to Black history, and, just really started to open my eyes. And from there, that drove me to wanting to go to the University of Washington and, It's just something in my heart that I knew. I was top 10% in my class. I had the GPA, I had the grades, and probably could have went to a lot of different schools, but I only applied for three. And I applied for the other two just to say I did it, but I just knew I was getting into UW. And I got in.
That's bold.
Yes, I was like, you know what? I was like, I know this is my path and this is where I'm supposed to be. So I think I applied for WSU, Portland State, and UW. I had no interest in going to either of the two other schools, but that was just to say I did it. Because I knew my destiny. And so I got into UW, and similarly to Tiana, I was starting off, going into pre-nursing, because that's what the seed that was planted into my head, right? You're not gonna, if you don't get a good paying job, or you're not going to get a good paying job if you don't go into STEM, or, if you don't go into nursing, then, it's going to be hard to find a job. So just do something that'll keep you stable and secure. It's just like, that didn't feel like me, I wanted to help people, but I knew it wasn't necessarily, being a nurse, because that's an important job and it's vital and they're still helping people. But I was, I knew inside, my way of helping people is going to be a different type of contribution. And so that's when I wanted to build on what I knew, and I got my bachelor in political science. I feel like my heart lives in LSJ, Law, Societies, and Justice, because I took a lot of those classes, because a lot of them are kind of, joined. But, so that's where a lot of my, passion comes from, is those LSJ courses. And then when I got my bachelor's during COVID, I just felt like there was still more I needed to learn. There was more that I needed to go on my path. And so that's what landed me at the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance, and got my MPA in June.
Okay. This is great. Lots of great background. And you also answered my next question, which is about how you two met and developed a connection. So talk to me, let's get right into the podcast. And what were the conversations like that led to this? How did this all unravel or develop?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. And I would say, I think the podcast, it was kind of something that we had thought of, I would say, about a year ago, but I believe that our conversations, years prior to this, were kind of where we initially had thought we want to go into, pursuing social justice. We want to infuse equity into our workplaces. And we had always had a passion for DEI work. Like Brad mentioned, we were involved in the Cultural Awareness Club. And everything that we've done up until this point has been to uplift not only our community, but other marginalized communities. And I believe with both of our backgrounds, I had the storytelling background, and I wanted to amplify the voices of people like us. And we wanted to provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals, that on our audience. We believe our audience is us, our age group, and even, those high schoolers that are kind of uncertain about where they're headed. And we thought, we didn't really have role models that looked like us, as I mentioned before, and we wanted to provide that for people. And we had met so many amazing professionals, exceptional people. And we thought, why don't we go ahead and just convene all of these, people that we've met that have helped us along the way on our journey and have inspired us and supported us. And let's go ahead and bring them on, and let's speak to them to learn about how they've gotten to where they have. And, we wanted to provide those stories of inspiration for people, and also, to see the resilience that a lot of these individuals have. So that was kind of the impetus behind all of this, was really just amplifying Black voices. And, that's our mission, is providing mentorship and promoting representation for the advancement of the Black community. And we believe that we have, been able to do that so far, and that, our younger high school selves would have wanted something like this. We would have listened to it and probably saved ourselves a lot of trouble. But yeah, I'll go ahead and let Brad kind of jump in.
Absolutely. I really feel like it was just a culmination of our lived experience, from that day, when we went into the principal's office together and said, hey, we're experiencing racism. This is not okay. Just really a full circle moment of everything that we've been through and witnessed together and separately, because our experiences are so interconnected. And growing up, low income, going to college and not knowing the slightest clue of what's going on or what to do, but just having to figure it out as you go. We came together and we said, what if we started a podcast? What if we just created a space where we could talk and share an authentic story? Because so many times in professional spaces, Black folk, our collective experiences, we're not allowed to really speak on our issues because you never know if someone's going to invalidate that or make it, oh, you're just pulling the race card or, nothing. And so, we often feel like we have to keep ourselves confined in these professional spaces. And the vision behind it was really to have a space where we could speak on our experiences without fear, without any repercussion, and to just, lay our stories out there and and through sharing stories of others, because our experience is a collective experience. One thing that you realize through our podcast is, we are all, in a way, we all are one. We have different life paths, but similar stories that come together and make us who we are as a culture through shared history. And that was, one day we were kayaking and we were just really trying to immerse ourselves in nature. We were just trying to say, what should a name be? And, we were just kayaking in the lake and we were like, have we heard of Identity Unboxed? And so we started, searching up on like Spotify and Googling, is there an Identity Unboxed podcast? And we were like, no, that's the one. Boom. We knew because that was.
It's a great name.
Yeah. Really going to, I'll stop here and continue.
So let me ask, why a podcast as opposed to some other form of media?
Yeah. I can go ahead and start. Just my journalism background, like I had mentioned, I was looking for news jobs after graduation and I kept falling up short. I really wanted to write, and I started to realize, I love listening to podcasts, and I think that, specifically Gen Z and younger generations are starting to, find our news in other forms such as social media, in long form storytelling. And I think just with the fast paced type of life we're living, it's not as common for people to sit down and read the newspaper anymore, like a digital newspaper. I'm not sure people really get physical ones anymore. But I thought, moving into a medium like the podcast would be something where we would be able to grasp people's attention, and they'd be able to listen to it on their own time. And it's something that, it's static. It's going to be there. People can come back to it. They can kind of absorb it on their own time. And so, we also wanted to have the conversational aspect of our podcasts are not really, we don't really edit them. We actually do just hop on, and everything that you're hearing it's really unfiltered. As Brad said, we want to get, the raw stories out and be vulnerable. So that was partly why is we wanted to remove the masks that we've kind of had to use to survive, honestly, navigating white spaces, predominantly white institutions. And we just wanted to be ourselves. And so the podcast, it just seemed like the right way to move. But yeah, Brad, go ahead and.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I think, being able to capture that, I feel like so often today, while visual media is a great aspect to it, we really wanted people to focus on the message, to sit and be still and listen and absorb, what our guests are saying, what their experiences are, what they've been through, so they can take that, and apply it to their own lives. And I think having the platform like a podcast has really been helpful to reach people because, we don't have to, call people and say, hey, can you like come meet us here so we can have a sit down? We can do everything virtually. It's convenient for everyone. And really, we did what we could with what we had. And that's the beauty of it is, we come from poverty. We don't have a bunch of money to rent a recording studio and do all these lavish things. But we said, you know what, we're going to do what we can with what we have, and we're going to make it work. And the product is going to be great. So,
I wanted to follow up on something that you said, Tiana. You talked about, you're hearing the authentic voices and, not editing. And I noticed, I've listened to obviously a few of the podcasts. They're great. And it's come up several times about code switching and how you have to do that so much in certain parts of your lives. Talk a little bit about how in this setting, you don't have to do that. How important that's been to be coming from the same community as the people you're talking to and being able to talk in the way you want to without having to sort of think about how you're presenting yourself.
Yeah. I would say the whole experience has been very healing. We've, you know, had this kind of burden lifted off of our shoulders. I think that's one of the main aspects of this, is that we've been able to come to these conversations and really bring our full selves. You know, a lot of times you hear that in, you know, workplaces, bring your full self to work. Well, for a lot of, you know, Black people particularly, we're masking a side of ourselves. We're minimizing, you know, our personalities, our way of dress. You know, there's the conformity that you feel like you have to adhere to. And just to be able to be in a space and not worry about how people are perceiving us for once, because we're able to relate to someone that's had, you know, these similar experiences that we've had and experience. It's validating, you know, to know that we haven't, this is real, you know, that's what we've experienced. As people have told us, you know, I've had people say horrible things and denied my lived experiences, and it validated that I've experienced racism, microaggressions, microinvalidations, and you do start to kind of question yourself, and you kind of wonder, well, did that really happen, or did it happen like that? And then you speak to someone else, like, you know, Brad and I will get together, and I'm like, well, I think that, you know, that was something that maybe it was more than, you know, the other person had said it was, you know. And so I think just being able to connect with these, you know, Black individuals that have so much more wisdom than we do and have had to kind of figure out how to not survive, but to thrive, has been the best, you know, lesson that we could pull out of this. And again, it's just been healing.
Yeah, I would say with code switching, Tiana put it perfectly. It's really like wearing a mask. And with this podcast, we really wanted to lift the veil. Because the best way I can describe it is you go into these spaces and you already know subconsciously what people are thinking before they get to know you. They have an image of what they see on the media of Black folk, and that's kind of what people, from my experience, expect. And the amount of times I've walked into a room and you have to sit up straight and be proper and just like, okay, like time to put on the show, and people are like, wow, you're so articulate. Like, I was not expecting that from you.
You mentioned that in one of them.
People have said that to me. Like, I've heard, I was not expecting that. Like, I haven't heard you speak before, and you're just so articulate. And it's like, why is that surprising that I'm well put together, that I can speak a full sentence, that I'm not what you think I am? And so that is a perfect description of the veil that we have to put on. Like, I know that when I go into a space where there's not a lot of people like me, I have to switch because I already know what they're thinking. And so I think that was the goal. I know that was the goal of this podcast, is to have a space where there is no switch. And before we go online, before we press play, I always tell people, be yourself, breathe. Like, this is not an interview where you have to button up and just, you know, say everything right. Like, just be yourself. And that's something that we tried to reiterate to every single guest.
I'm curious. I'm sure for some of the guests, this is really a breath of fresh air also, that they don't often get to have a conversation this way either. I mean, if you listen to it, it's a very relaxed and very honest conversation among people who understand the same, you know, lived experience.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's so true. You know, our guests have shared with us after, like, this did not go as I thought it would. Like, this was so, you know, like, they had an idea that we were going to interview them about their career, you know, and what exactly did you do as your path? And then we like really get into the intersection of, you know, your personal life and your professional life, and how your identity has influenced your decisions and why you've decided to do what you have done. And I think, you know, that's been something that we've heard with almost every guest. They've said, you know, this was so amazing for me to be able to reflect on my journey and, you know, it's an entirety. Right. So yeah, thank you for bringing that, Nancy.
Yeah. How do you pick your guests? I mean, there's so many to choose from. I'm sure it must be challenging to decide.
It's hard.
To just limit it. What are the things you're thinking about when you're deciding on guests?
Yeah, so when we choose our guests, we really started out, you know, with just a few, like, not a few people. We had a list of probably like 20 people that we just brainstormed, like, who has inspired us? You know, not necessarily, you know, trying to, you know, go for, you know, something huge, but it's just, who do we know that has inspired us on our personal journey, so that we can give them the spotlight, you know. And then we kind of trickle it down to our niche, leaders, professionals, folks that have been through adversity, that have overcome that adversity, or at least have reached a position where they can shed light down to younger generations. For example, Dr. J was an amazing interview. People, not that, in order to be on the podcast, you have to be so well qualified. But the point in doing that is that, for young professionals to sit and look, hey, if this person made it here, so can you. And so it's really hard because we want to interview everybody on the list, right? But it's also about, keeping things confined to a season, making sure that things aren't oversaturated, and also making sure, okay, like we've been really heavy on this topic and people in this field. How can we switch it up and get more people in this field? And so I'll let Tiana explain some more as well.
Yeah. I think, Brad, I want to echo everything you said. You put it perfectly. And it's very hard for us to pick our guests. We have gotten so many nominations. I think we have a list of it's nearing 50 people at this point. And we've had probably, I think, 8 guests so far, and more episodes coming out. But I also think, adding to the points Brad said about, leaders that have inspired us, we also want to tie in relevant issues to the Black community, that we want to know more about. And that also stems from us, growing up and not really learning much about Black history, right? So I think for us, it was kind of like, well, what do we want to dive more into? And how has this person been able to use, their skills in order to impact our community? So I think, we do a lot of research on social issues. We spend so much time curating our questions in order to really elicit responses that we feel like are educational, but also, bring that humanity into the stories as well from our guests. So it's hard, and we have so many people we want to interview, but it's great because it means that we have so many more episodes coming.
So you mentioned something about coming up, having a list that, I forget how you worded it, but it sounds like you maybe reach out to people to come up with names that you might not know of yourself, or are these all people that you already knew about yourselves?
Yeah. So we did have some in just our professional networks that we've met. And I would say, that was probably the bulk of our list once we started out. But then we get nominations from our guests. They'll send them just like, hey, you should interview so-and-so. I met them. And it's kind of just become this community for people to start nominating, people that we've met, our lives have said, oh, I know this amazing person. We want you to highlight them. So we have all of these names on this list right now that we want to reach out to everyone. But we do, we just go ahead and email the guests. Some of them we've never met, and they've all, for the most part, have responded and been interested in joining. So we haven't received a rejection. Maybe, an email was lost in a void, but most people have been interested to hop on with us.
That's great. So who's your dream guest?
Oh, I'll let Brad, you go first.
I'll go first. My dream guest is Seattle native Angela Rye. Lawyer. I believe she graduated from Seattle U with her law degree. But I love how she's really put on for Seattle and how she's doing her thing. And a lot of people don't know that she's here. They see her as a commentator on CNN and things like that. But definitely for Seattle and just showing, the greatness that comes out of the city, I would love to have Angela Rye.
Yeah, I love that, Brad. This one probably is easy for, you to guess, but I would say Oprah. I am so inspired by Oprah, her story of, how she pursues this really stardom, right? She becomes this huge person that's very prominent. So I think, she's so inspirational and is, excellent journalist. I love watching her interviews. She asks amazing questions and gets great stories. Yeah, I would say Oprah.
That's a great choices. I'm going to jump down to a question I was going to ask later, but I noticed you always end with the question, what does Blackness mean to you? And I'm curious how you thought through that and why that was an important question to end on for you.
I'll let you go ahead, Tiana.
Yeah. That is something that we wanted to ask each of our guests because we feel like Blackness is who we are. And each individual we've talked to has a different definition of what Blackness means to them based on, their experiences and what they were taught about Blackness. And it was important for us to bring out the beauty in our culture. to bring out the strength, because I think that a lot of times for, you know, for Black people, we feel that our people have experienced immense struggle and pain, and turmoil for centuries. And, you know, a lot of that is still here in the present day, right? Our history has, you know, impacted us adversely. And for us, we wanted to show people a different kind of side of Blackness, right? And that beauty, and just allow our guests to really speak to that and show really, you know, how it's impacted them. So for us, it was just important to kind of tie everything together by ending on that last question, just to feel that healing, the healing aspect again about, you know, what does your culture mean to you? And, you know, really, how would you define your Blackness, right? Because we're a polylit, and I think that was important for us to highlight.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to this quote, I am because we are. Like, we are all Black, but we're also all individuals. So it was really trying to get to the heart of the person and say, from your lived experience, from your background, from what you've overcame, what does Blackness mean to you? Because so many times we allow people to, run with narratives about, our community that we seemingly are always fighting to disprove. And so that question was really to show that we are a collective, but our individual strengths and how we interpret our Blackness is what makes us strong and will make us strong going into the future.
That's great. How have the conversations you've had on the podcast changed your thinking about your own lives and careers? Have you found yourself thinking differently as a result of conversations you've had?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you're nodding, really Brad.
That's a good question. Brad, you go first, though. I feel like you're eager, so.
Oh my gosh, yes. We started this project, amid a tough life transition for me where, I was going through, limbo at, jobs and things like that. And I was experiencing certain things. And it was a really tough time. And so to have this podcast, with so many professionals that have been through the same things that I was actively going through, it really was like a guiding force, because it was like, as I was going through turmoil, I was getting the mentorship that I really felt that I needed, as I navigate the workplace. So even sometimes I'll go back, and when I'm struggling at work now, I'll go back to an episode and listen. And it's like, okay, how should I handle this? How should I go about this? Because it's so easy to revert back to, what you once knew or how you once reacted. But that's the joy of this podcast, is even me as a young Black professional, I'm using it because I'm listening to the people that are giving us wisdom. And so even, our mission, I feel like is we're reaping the benefit of our mission. And we really just hope that other folks are seeing that as well for their professional lives.
Yeah, completely. I just want to add on that point that we're being mentored to throughout the conversations. And I don't think like intentionally we thought that, we want to glean these strategies, but we have, gleaned strategies from these guests, that have been able to take us through their journeys and, show us that even though you're going through a difficult time, success is not linear. And I think, and I've mentioned this like many times throughout the podcast, is that we've seen that a lot of our guests have gone through these periods of feeling like they were kind of lost. They didn't really know where their career was going. They weren't really sure what they were doing. And, reflecting back on my journey to get where I am now, that was entirely true. I kind of hopped around to a lot of different jobs post-grad. This is, the fourth job I've had now at the UW, which I enjoy so much. And I have a passion for public service. So I think it's a perfect place for me to be. But it just helped me realize that there's so many different phases of our lives that there's a purpose for all of them, and you just kind of have to be really present. So I think that's been one of the main kind of themes throughout this, is be present and realize that success, it's a long journey. You're not really sure when it's going to happen, but it will happen.
It's not a moment. It's success is a process, right? Not really
a journey.
Yeah. What's been the reaction? Tell me a little bit about how people have responded to the podcast.
It's been so much love, just, even the people that we look up to, that we interview, will reach back out to us and say, man, I wish I had something like this when I was growing up, you know, a similar space like this where I could have listened when I was younger. You know, people from high school that reach back out and say, hey, we see you guys, like you're doing a great job. Just, you know, family, there's so much love. And, you know, going into this, you know, obviously we had to make a niche for what we wanted to talk about, and it was uplifting the Black community. And of course, there are going to be people that, you know, are like, why are you only talking about the Black community? Why, you know, but the reaction that we've been getting from so many professionals, from our peers, has just been so beautiful. And it's really inspired us to keep going, and to not let this just be a thing that we let die, to keep, you know, breathing life into it.
Yeah, entirely. Brad, you put it perfectly. Yeah, we've just received positive feedback, honestly, even more so than we expected. We went into this really without putting expectations on how many people were going to listen in, and we didn't go into it to get followers or anything. Like, it was simply, our mission, right? But to see that, like, there's been so much attention on the project itself, it's been just amazing, right? Just to see like our work, kind of come to fruition. So yeah, and just like having people from our past reach out to us, and they like say that they're proud of us and they've been listening, like that's been, just something that's been really uplifting, and it's encouraged us to keep going. So yeah, we intend to keep doing that.
Do you have any long-term goals of where you want this to go? Like what your dream vision of how this would develop? Or
Yeah.
do you just want to keep it as it is?
Oh, wow. There's so much. I think it's just been evolving so organically, right? And even like when we started out, we weren't sure how many, industries we wanted to go into and what, issues that we kind of wanted to touch on. And then as we've like had each episode, we've decided, oh, we kind of want to, talk about this topic. And, it's just kind of flowed that way. So I think it will continue to move in that direction. And we just want to keep growing our community. I think that's kind of the main goal for us, and continue just to have the conversations. We're not really sure how that might take shape. It may eventually turn into something where we meet in person, like Brad mentioned. Right now it's virtually, it's so nice to be able to hop on, but we do think that there's value in people maybe gathering in person, and hearing like these panel type of discussions potentially. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're headed, but we're not quite sure. We haven't solidified that vision yet.
We won't hold you to that.
I think, one thing that we really are trying to do with Identity Unboxed is practicing what we preach. And I think so many times, or so many people, even me, I spent my life, I knew everything I was going to do. I'm going to be top 10% of my class. I'm going to get my bachelor's from UW. I'm going to get my master. It's like I was trying to control everything, every single step. And one thing that we wanted to do with this project is to really find joy in the journey. And part of that is letting this evolve organically, not saying we're going to do this with it, we're going to do that with this, and that's what we're going to make it, because that's how we've always lived life. And it works. But, a part of what we wanted to do with this is say, we're going to be guided. What's supposed to happen will happen, and it's going to happen when it's meant to be. And so I think that's the beauty in this journey, is it's really something that's selfless. We really want to uplift the community, and that's the main goal, and that's what we're going to do, and see what happens.
That's great. Tell me how you feel your University of Washington education has kind of prepared you for this. Do you feel that what you've learned at the UW has helped you take this on?
Yeah, I would say like so much so. At the UW, I was involved in quite a bit, specifically like advocacy work. I was on a student advisory council within the College of Arts and Sciences, actually. So I did work on a lot of different like policy campus-wide, collaborating with campus leadership on different initiatives, and really on some of those issues I talked about earlier, uplifting marginalized communities, making it a more inclusive, accessible campus environment that centers equity. And so that was kind of the main through line. And I think that the UW really equipped me with the skills that I needed to be able to deliver a vision to people, and set out goals for myself, and really be able to set a path and a strategy in order to attain those. So I think This podcast is really a culmination of those years of me at the UW, just kind of trying to figure it out. But, just trying to feel like I was confident in my abilities. And I think that my time at UW did show me that I am capable. I was able to kind of confront the imposter syndrome that I had. And now I feel like I have been able to overcome that, even if it comes in little, pieces every now and then. But I think the UW, yeah, definitely had a huge impact on me and the influence in my career.
I definitely would agree with that. I think my education at UW helped me in a lot of ways. Two of which, well, one of which being finding my identity. Taking that African American history class. I remember being in high school, and I asked our principal, "Why don't we have an African American history class?" And he said, "We don't have the funding for it," which is probably true in most cases. But being able to come to the University of Washington and not only pursue my professional passions, but being able to learn about my history and in an unfiltered way and saying, no, this is what really happened. Like, these people were really like mistreated. It's systemic, it's deep, and really, it really helped me understand my background, my family history. And, as I looked more into my lineage, it's like, this is why things are the way they are. It all goes back. And through that self-discovery, as I navigated UW, I was always in an internship. I had an internship with, and I kind of live in the nonprofit world. So I had an internship with Teen Child, Washington Environmental Council, also worked for the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. Now I'm at Youth Care. It's a nonprofit working to serve homeless youth. And so I've spent a lot of my time in the nonprofit realm. And so, as I was, getting my political science degree, as I was getting my MPA, especially, and we were having those, conversations, and I was learning about the legislative process. I was learning about, how public policy works in public administration. It really helped put my professional career into perspective. And I think it really helps when I have these conversations, like with upcoming interviews. Like, I kind of know what I'm talking about, in a sense that, when we're, interviewing people that have a public service background, I can actually speak to that. And so I definitely think the University of Washington prepped me for this journey.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about your day jobs. The other part of your life, just because I want to be able to mention that a little bit in the story. So, short, give me a little sort of elevator kind of speech description of what you do in your jobs.
Yeah, I can give you a little synopsis. So I work at the Continuum College. I'm a program administrator. So academic operations, and we mostly handle course planning, student enrollment, dealing with budgets and supporting program operations for various graduate degree programs and professional certificates. And part of that work is also documenting different operations processes and ensuring that there's a smooth delivery of our operations and the programs that we deliver to students, and ensuring that, students have an exceptional experience, at the University of Washington, and that they feel, supported. So that's my main role. And it's very different from, the creative stuff that I really do enjoy, but I feel like I also am a very logical person. So it's been interesting for me to kind of like flex that side of my brain, kind of work in that systematic way. So that's kind of the main points, but feel free to ask me more about it too.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm the community engagement and in-kind manager at Youth Care. Youth Care is a nonprofit organization that serves youth experiencing homelessness and wants them to reach their fullest potential, not just to survive, but to thrive and to empower our youth. And so my job is a little multifaceted. So I run the in-kind program, and that's essentially, processing not monetary donations, but physical donations. If people donate clothes, shampoo, body wash, things of that nature, making a streamlined process for that, and then getting the supplies that we need, and then making sure that they're equitably distributed to our youth among our service centers. And also on another piece of that, the community engagement aspect, I do a lot of community partnerships work. So recently this holiday season, I facilitated a partnership with Youth Care in Seattle Storm. If anyone went to Burger Master and they saw the roundup for youth care, I was behind that. And so a lot of exciting things. So a mix of, fundraising and building community partnerships, and also making sure that our clients that are experiencing homelessness get what they need. And so it's a really fulfilling job. The nonprofit sector, unfortunately, and this way the system works is it's a nonprofit. And so a lot of times nonprofits are under capacity, strapped for cash. But the work is really deep and powerful and meaningful, and it's needed.
That's great. Thank you. What would you tell others who have an idea like yours? Not the same idea. They have their own idea, but they're hesitant to start because I'm sure, there was a real leap of faith starting the podcast. What would you tell others who have some idea that they think could be interesting and don't know how to go about it?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and start, Brad, unless you'd like to.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First off, my short answer would be just start. That's kind of what Brad and I did. My long answer is do not believe the limitations that people put on you or your dreams. There were several people throughout my life when I was growing up that had put limitations on me, and it's discouraging to hear that, but I was able to achieve those things that I set out. And I thought, what if I would have listened to that person? I never would have been able to make it here. I never would have been able to accomplish this, right? And overcome this huge feat. So I think like the main thing is just really knowing what fulfills you and understanding your skills and what you can bring to everything that you do, right? And just put your all into it, really. And be authentic. That's the main thing. And I think that's, what Brad and I have found to be the most important is it's always so powerful just to be yourself, because there's a lot of people that are just not comfortable with showing up is who they are. And that's your biggest superpower is your authenticity, even though that sounds so cliche. But I think that's really been like, just be unapologetically you truly. And people will recognize that and, they'll see that.
Absolutely. I think of this Will Smith quote where he says, you have to believe in yourself so much, or something along the lines where Will Smith says, you have to believe in yourself so much that other people think you're crazy. Because I echo everything else Tiana said, and this was something that I struggled with that she actually helped me through. I was like, oh, I don't know if like I should start this. I don't know if this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And she's like, why do you care what people think, what people are going to say? You have to believe in yourself. And so that's the biggest thing is you cannot limit yourself, because the limitations you put on yourself are oftentimes projected on by other people who have self-limitations themselves. And so you can't listen to the noise. You have to believe in yourself so much that you're crazy, and don't think you need a bunch of stuff to start. We have microphones, headphones, computer, and a couple software tools that, we didn't shop thousands and thousands of dollars to get this started. And so that's the big thing. Get out of your head, believe in yourself, and just keep it pushing and let them laugh. Let them underestimate you, let them laugh.
Yeah.
And just keep it pushing.
I love that. I think I have covered almost everything. I'm wondering if there's things that I haven't asked you that I guess the only other thing is, you mentioned you already had 8 guests, and I know some of the episodes have been split episodes, so there are more podcasts and guests. Do you have a sense of seasons, or is it just sort of ongoing? How are you viewing it?
Yeah, right now it's just kind of ongoing. We have so many nominations that we didn't really see a point in like limiting it to a season, right? So that's kind of the direction that we're going, is just continuing to bring guests in that we think are relevant to whatever we'd like to talk about. And also like staying in alignment with like current events as well. So I think, that's kind of where we're headed with it.
Yeah. Tell me the areas you cut. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Brad.
Oh, no worries. My brain switched anyways. I was going to say something and then it just left. So it's okay.
Welcome to my world.
It happens.
It'll come back.
It'll come back.
If you can just give me an example of the range of topics it's the range of areas that people that you've interviewed are focused on. That'd be just great to have.
Yeah, wow, it's pretty wide. I would say, we've had a lot of public servants. We've talked a lot about societal issues, education. We've had a journalist on. We've talked about, a DI professional. We've had academics from, different fields, nonprofit sector. So we've kept it pretty broad, and we want to continue to touch on as many industries as we have. We've been really like humanities centered, which we've noticed that. So, we kind of want to also move into more of that STEM, right? We want to get, some engineers and, some medical professionals. So we're still kind of curating that aspect, because most of our connections have kind of been in like the humanities and the arts. So that's, who we've initially reached out to. But yeah, that's kind of been the main industries that we've touched on.
Yeah, I echo everything Tiana said. And that's, as we were discussing, should we just keep this rolling or should we make it a seasonal thing? That was one thing before, if we even decided that we're going to wrap up season one, we definitely wanted to broaden, who the career fields that people are in as we continue on. And so we got Boom Boona Coffee, a Black business owner that was outside of the humanities and someone who was in finance, who worked their way up and, started something amazing. And so I echo everything Tiana said, from STEM, medical professionals, Black business owners. We really want to show the breadth and the depth of the community. And so I think as we continue filming, that's going to be the age that we turn now, is getting a mix of, different professionals in their different career paths.
Have most of your guests been Seattle based so far? And is that a thing has that been a priority for you? Or is that just how it worked out?
It has been a priority for us. We wanted to highlight like the Black people in Seattle, because we know that we're here, but often we like don't really run into each other very, very much. Seattle doesn't have that much of a Black community, and I know it's gone down significantly over the years. So that was important to us to like show that there are like Black people here that are, they're professionals and they're successful, and like, let's, bring us all together. And so we've seen that like just the connections again, like come from, highlighting the local community.
Exactly. And I think that was obviously a part of our growth strategy. We don't know where this is going to go. We don't know. And this could be advice for people looking to start something. Obviously shoot for the stars. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll be getting interviewed on the Today Show. But that's one thing we wanted to do, is really confine it to a niche and have a specific audience and then build it out over time. And so I think that's the beauty of our project, is once we see traction and we see, a lot of local people are getting love and, they're tuning in, then maybe one day we'll broaden that and we'll go to people out of state. Maybe, you never know. And so I think a part of our strategy was to not bite off more than we can chew and say, okay, we want to highlight the Black community. There are so many people in here in Seattle that haven't really gotten their flowers for all the amazing work that they're doing. So let's start here at home and give people their flowers. Even right here at home, interviewing folks that work for UW. So it was really our thing. Start from home and grow.
The Maya Smith interview was great, by the way. Speaking of UW folks.
Yes, thank you so much. We really enjoyed that conversation. It's amazing.
Yeah. Brad, you mentioned building your audience, and I'm wondering, who right now are you finding is your audience?
It's the beautiful thing about it is it's actually pretty split. Our I would say it's split between, folks between 18 and 25, and then, professionals between 40 and 60. That seems to be the big two chunks. And was exactly the intended goal. Honestly, I wasn't expecting, when we looked at the demographics of who was watching, I know that from my experience, our generation, just being young college kids, they're like, oh, like a podcast about professionalism. So I wasn't really expecting, to get a broad young audience at first. But to see that young people are actually listening was great. It was just exactly what we expected. And so we only hope that continues to grow. And hopefully students will see us through this interview and they'll say, hey, what's Identity Unboxed? And they'll go and listen to an episode and maybe hear something that they needed to hear on their professional journey.
That's great. What have I not asked you that you wanted to tell me?
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've had really great questions, Nancy.
Yeah.
I feel like you've asked us so much. And I think
I had a long list.
Yeah, no, you were great. Like I feel like we've touched on like all of it, on every aspect pretty much, right, Brad?
Yeah, our upbringing, the vision,
Yeah.
how we wanted to grow. Advice to people wanting to start something. I think we really touched on it. I guess the one last word of advice could be believe in yourself. To anyone who reads this, our advice is really believe in yourself.
Yeah, and I would say, oh, sorry, Nancy.
Go ahead. No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would say that also, like, just to end on a note of, don't make decisions out of fear. I think I said that, before, but don't make decisions out of fear and don't put limitations on yourself. So that's really how it ended. And I think that's what we were hoping to do with this project is, just go into it without really putting a pressure on ourselves and just really enjoying the journey and be present in everything that you do. So yeah, I think we covered it all. So thank you.
Maybe we've never been asked the question, what does Blackness mean to us? So maybe that's something we
I was thinking of that, and then I wasn't sure that was appropriate for me to be asking you. I was kind of like torn on that, being a white person. Is that
no? That's okay.
No, go ahead.
Go for it. What is
Brad? You start.
To you.
Yeah, I would say Blackness to me really just means love and resilience. Through so much pain and adversity, continually. We've seen our people rise above the odds. We've seen ourselves at the bottom. And even though the change, feels incremental and so slow and it's painful, we're always going to prevail. And so Blackness to me just really stands for resilience, endurance, strength, and love.
Yeah. I'll echo that, Brad. The resilience is a huge one. And I would say Blackness to me is also like the collectivity in our community to pursue justice. I think you see that throughout history that we want to liberate not only ourselves but other marginalized communities, and that's a huge drive for us and everything that we do. And also I think just the strength in our community as well, and the beauty, right, and feeling like we're able to see ourselves apart from like what the narrative has been told about us, and just to see us in a positive light, and also understanding that like we are polylythic, as I mentioned before, and there are so many different ways to be Black. And I think for me, like I had an identity kind of crisis a little bit growing up because I was raised really like by my white family primarily, and I didn't know much about my Blackness. So for me, it was just like this constant like yearning to know more about what makes me Black, and where did my people come from? So yeah, I think there's so much, but yeah, there's so many ways to be Black. So don't ever feel like you can't just be your authentic self.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.